So today on the show, I'm very excited to welcome Brandon Leibowitz. Brandon is the founder of SEO Optimizers, which is a digital marketing company. He's been running since 2007, which is awesome. I always love having veterans on the show because there's usually lots of great stories there. He specializes in helping small and medium-sized businesses increase their online visibility and drive traffic that converts into client sales and leads. His insights have been featured in Yahoo, Entrepreneur, HuffPo, and other top publications. Whether through SEO strategies, podcast marketing, or anything else, his mission is to help businesses expand their reach and establish themselves as industry leaders in the digital space. Brandon, great to have you.
Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, for sure. So my first question is, so it sounds like you've been at this for the better part of 20 years. I'd love to just kind of start at the beginning. Where were you before starting SEO Optimizers, and what did it take to found it back then?
Kind of happened unexpectedly when I graduated from college back in 2007. I got my degree in business marketing. One of the first jobs I got out of school was helping a company out with their digital marketing, which I didn't really know much about it back then. They didn't really teach it to you in school. And I told the company that, and they said, don't worry, we're kind of new to this as well. And we're going to learn with you and take you to different classes and workshops and seminars. And after doing that for a while, just realized that everyone's probably going to have a website in the future. And back then I was helping out with their social media, doing email marketing, doing paid ads, doing SEO, taking pictures of products, writing product descriptions, kind of doing it all. But I realized that SEO is free traffic. And also when I'm working at this company, I could go to a local restaurant or just any local businesses and try to pick up freelance clients here or there, as long as they're not competing with this one company that I was working for, which they made a very specific product that really only had 3 competitors in the whole world. So I was like, all right, I could just go out and just start building up my business and decide to go for or build SEO optimizers while I was working full time, and did that for a while, where I'd work at different advertising agencies as a director of SEO, and before work, after work, and on my lunch breaks, I'd work on my own company, and eventually was able to build that up to where I was able to quit my job, and been doing that ever since, just helping people tap into that traffic from search engines.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so it sounds like you've had an interesting trajectory that I've picked up on. I was just listening to, I think it was My First Million, and it was the founder, or one of the, not the founder, but I think current, co-owner of Ridge Wallet. And he had a similar trajectory where he basically started, he had started the agency and then had one really strong client, and then it ended up getting a stake in that company, which was Ridge Wallet, and then kind of grew it from there. So I kind of have thought about what it takes to start with one company, build an agency out of it, and then there's other people like this guy that kind of have done the reverse of that, but it's sort of an interesting way to think about it. So I guess going back to that role, when did you know that you wanted to spin out an agency versus just continuing to work in-house? And how did you make that decision back then?
It was probably just, at the first, I was just happy to get a couple clients here or there and work full-time and have a full-time job out of college. So I was happy working at these agencies and just make a little bit of extra money here or there. But after a while, probably after doing that for 10 years, I was like, maybe I should just go all in on this digital marketing. And also what kind of messed things up is I love skateboarding. And in my 20s, I think every other year I broke a bone and had to have surgery, which took me out of commission, and it was always in my hands, which is the worst luck. And that meant I'd have a cast on and I'd have to leave my job. And usually I was one of 3 or 4 people doing SEO, and they'd find someone because they couldn't wait 6 months for me to heal, and that kind of messed things up. So in between that, those injuries kind of messed things up. But once I got into my 30s, I haven't had any injuries since then, knock on wood. Gave up the skateboarding. Can't really do that as much as I like. It's more fun to watch than falling on concrete. So after doing that for a few years, working at the agency full time, I was like, maybe I should just really go all in on the SEO and just decide to push it all in. And after doing really going all in for a year, I was like, all right, I'm making the same amount that I'm making at this agency. Why just quit my job and just really go all in now? That way I could get even more time to really push it and grow it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're definitely you're in Venice, which my impression of Venice is it's like one of the skateboarding meccas. So it sounds like a cool place to do that. So with that, let's kind of go to those early years of the agency. I think that a lot of the times there's temptation from agency owners to take on lots of services, work with lots of verticals, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you kind of like honed down on SEO and then you've done it for like the next 20 years. What was what was that like? Did you ever have temptations to take on other services, and how has that played out over the course of time?
Well, I've grown it to, well, first it was SEO and social media. Now I focus on just search engines or anywhere where you could search, whether it's ChatGPT, YouTube, anywhere that you could search, trying to make sure that you get exposure and visibility with the organic and the ads. Because over the years, I've realized with SEO, it's not really a means to an end. SEO will get you traffic, but business owners don't really care about traffic. Like I'll rank you higher for your keywords, but that's not going to get you conversions. And in general, half your traffic is just going to leave your website immediately, and just try to keep yourself top of mind and have multiple touch points and running those remarketing ads and just trying not to just get traffic, but trying to help with those conversions as well. And giving advice on the website, the layout, the structure of it, and trying to say like, hey, let's move this call to action up above the fold. That way people could find it more easily. And let's just try to optimize this traffic, because once we start getting e-rankings, it doesn't always convert. And that comes down to getting people to trust you. It's not easy. Getting Google to trust you is difficult. Once Google trusts you, then you got to get people to trust you, which is much, much more difficult to get them to want to buy from you when there's so many options out there, especially with e-commerce. Amazon is just that one-click shopping where it's like, how do you get people off of Amazon into trusting you and want to go to your website? And it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that makes sense. So it sounds like you ultimately have focused on the end problem or outcome people are interested in, which is getting conversions, not just SEO and traffic. Um, to frame that out a little bit, can you talk about the sorts of clients that you've worked with, and has that changed at all over the course of 17 years?
I mean, it's always been just businesses, not specific to one industry. It was just, as long as you have a product or service that's not just something very generic. Because if you're just selling t-shirts, we're going to compete with Amazon and Target and Walmart. And if you're just a startup, it's not going to really work. So finding more niche keywords or services and products and businesses. But in general, it's usually local or e-commerce are the two more common types of businesses, but not specific industries.
Yeah, that makes sense. And has that, I think a lot of the times, to give a little context, I think a lot of what our audience and the agencies we work with are up against is trying to figure out how best to specialize. And there's like a lot of variables, right? Because you can focus on vertical, size of company. You can then, multiply the complexity by all the services you can offer and all these other things. How much of that has been a challenge for you guys? Like how much of that process has it always been that simple to figure out, i.e., local businesses and so on, or have you had twists and turns in the road?
I mean, it kind of just fell in that way. Didn't really plan on it. The beginning, I would just post on Craigslist because I didn't even have a website at the beginning and didn't know how to build a website, and found
Yeah.
someone that would barter with me where he built me a website and I did his SEO for like a Medicare supplement insurance plans. And so it was just hear that like all this weird stuff. Like the first company I worked at sold 3D lenticular products, which very niche, not much competition with 3D products, which is like on video games or like DVDs. There's whenever you still get them, that just change color or change like the way you look at it and change moves. But yeah, very weird, random businesses I've worked with. I'm like, I don't even know how you're still in business, but this is very viable and people love this, but it's something that's very niche. And it's always interesting finding those ones where like, that's like these survival products. I worked at this company one time and their zombie apocalypse kit was a biggest seller. It's also when Walking Dead first came out, but I was like, that is so strange that this product is just flying off the shelves. It's crazy. But
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like you've had a lot of success not verticalizing by looking at like more novel products, right, which are interesting and are inherently not, inherently like hard to pin down in terms of a consistent theme, which is cool. But within the inconsistency, there's like a thread of consistency. So that's cool. So to shift gears a little bit, can you talk about your team, like, and the sorts of roles that you've sort of established to build the company and how that might have changed over time?
Yeah, it's definitely adapted and changed from just the beginning, just having a virtual assistant kind of help me out here or there with just helping me just the tedious tasks that freed up my time to focus on more important things, to eventually getting project managers and just having them help out and stay organized, and then getting people to help get with a lot of the tedious tasks with SEO. It's a lot of content. I have a lot of writers. Still prefer to use humans versus AI, but unfortunately, a lot of the writers are using AI, and it's tough to find good writers that are not using AI, but still trying to focus on that. Google said we don't care who writes content anymore, if it's AI or human, but AI is not accurate, and I'd still prefer that human editorial content. And I think Google still does a little bit too, but I have a lot of people that help out with backlinks as well, which is a big part of SEO, is trying to get other websites to talk about you, and have people that help me find websites and work on outreach, because that part is also can be very tedious and time consuming. That way I can focus on the bigger picture.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to dig into that a little bit. I think right now, predictably, we're getting lots of like FUD, like fear, uncertainty, doubt about SEO, and like, AI's killing X, AI's killing Y. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what's the fact versus fiction in terms of like how AI is changing SEO right now?
That's Yeah, it's definitely changing how people search, and Google's just gonna have to figure out what's gonna happen. Are people gonna keep using ChatGPT or other AI platforms, or is Google Gemini gonna just be good enough where people just search on Google and use Gemini? But how is the AI search going to be different than the Google search, with websites and options and ads? And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But as long as there's people searching, there's ways to optimize. It doesn't matter where you're searching on Google, ChatGPT, Yelp, YouTube, Amazon. There's ways to optimize and try to rank. So if people are just going to be searching on AI, then we just got to work on optimizing for AI. But ever since I've been doing SEO, back in 2007, people said SEO is dying, SEO is dead. Now I feel like, and it's always shifting. I feel like now it's just, again, shifting and changing. But as long as people search, once search stops, then there's no more SEO. But as long as people are searching, then there's ways to optimize for that. It's just going to be on different platforms and different strategies.
Yeah, it's funny. There almost could be like some sort of business law you can make out of somebody saying XYZ is dead, right? What they really mean is that XYZ has gotten harder, and all the early entrants are now going to give up on it. So now you're left with everybody who's willing to stick it out, right? Like, we're seeing that with outbound right now. Everyone's like, Google and LLMs have killed outbound. And it's like, no, they've just made it harder. So now like everybody that was spending 30 minutes setting up, an Apollo account and an email address is now giving up on it, right? And going on to other things, right? Or as other tools like Clay and so on get bigger. So to dig into that a little bit, I'm curious, like, what does the process look like for optimizing for something like ChatGPT? Because to me, I'm like, there's this large language model that 5 people on Earth understand. Like, what does that look like for you now?
That one is it's Schema is what pulls in those results. So best practice in general is you want to put schema.org, which is a programming language that the search engines made about like 15 years ago. And you put that on your website, and that enhances your website on Google and all the search engines. So if you're searching on Google and you search for something and you see that answer right there, like if you're searching for a celebrity's birthday, that answer will be right there. That's from Schema, pulling that data in from Wikipedia usually for birthdays. But if you're searching for like the score of a basketball game, it'll show you that score right there. That's from Schema being pulled in. And you want Schema to be on your website. And that also helps AI. They pull that Schema and they look at that code to try to figure out what that page is about. But still pretty ambiguous about how it really works. We just know Schema is very important, but that's just best practice that you should be doing for your website anyways, for SEO purposes, just to make it more enhanced and help the search engines read your website. Because the easier you make it for search engines to read your website, the more they're going to reward you with better results and enhancing your listings. Sometimes you'll see stars in the search results. That's from Schema, or have reviews and all this other stuff that's not just websites that appear there, but any other enhancements is usually pulled in from Schema.
Makes sense. At least on some level. Maybe I don't understand all of it, but I would say that one question rather is like, how much of this is changing your traditional SEO process? Like, are you still thinking about backlinking and doing all these things when the ground that's under us is changing so much every day with AI?
Yep, because people are still using Google, and Google is still the number one search engine out there.
Yep.
And you got to think, how is AI going to rank a website? Or ChatGPT is heavily funded by Microsoft, which is Bing. And you got to think, how are they going to rank websites? Because if ChatGPT is just writing content for everybody, everyone's going to have the same content. And how does it know what's real, what's not real, and what's accurate? And it's going to rely on third-party trust signals, whether it's backlinks or just your citations, your name listed on third-party sites. But you just got to get those third-party trust signals sent to you, and we'll just have to see how they're going to rank them. But if it's Bing that's powering ChatGPT heavily, then it's probably going to be the same algorithm that Bing is already employing. It's just going to make the results a little bit different, where instead of giving you 10 websites, it's going to summarize it all and give you that summary. And then from there, you could talk back to it, which is a new feature where you could like ask it questions. And that's the part that really changed it. But AI has always been, or like featured snippets have been in the search results on Google for like over 10 years, where when you search on Google, go give you that answer right there before in like a little snippet, like a little box. And that was also pulled from Schema. And that was Google just trying to keep you on Google longer, because Google knows the longer you stay on Google, the more likely you're going to search, click on an ad, and make Google money. But now it's AI, is just, you could talk back to it and it's a longer response. But it's always something that's been taking traffic away from people or from websites, especially like Wikipedia, where you search for something. Wikipedia has just been dropping traffic, but they're still one of the top 10 most popular websites. Even though they're losing traffic from that featured snippet, it's brand awareness and people see that name out there. So it's good for branding. It's just changing how you do marketing now. And I feel like those remarketing ads and just trying to have those touch points in as many places as possible, email, it's all invaluable to just have it all work cohesively.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like it's a lot of the same, like underlying woodwork and just kind of different things on top of it. Tied to that, are there any interesting ways you're using AI within your agency now, or anything that you've adapted and made work in interesting ways?
The content part of it is a big piece of that SEO puzzle. Is Google loves content and good quality content. AI, and unfortunately with a lot of my writers, they're using AI. So I'm like, all right, let me just try it out, because some of my clients, they don't want to pay for writers, and we have to create content for lots of pages. Like sometimes we'll have to create 100 pages of content, and my writers will charge like $50 on average. And now I tell my clients, like, we don't need to necessarily use these writers. You could use ChatGPT, but you have to edit it. Like, you can't just copy it verbatim. But if we use AI, you have to go in and edit all these pages. And doing that, it with good prompts, it ranks just as well as human written content. But it's all about having good prompts. So like my prompts are like 3 pages long, where I'm telling it very, very specific details. I mean, you could even tell it like, hey, write for SEO. This is what Google's looking for in Google Webmaster Guidelines. This is what they say for best practices. And you try to incorporate all that in there, but you got to take everything with a grain of salt that Google tells you to, because it's Google really telling you the full truth. But then there's Gemini, and Google owns Gemini. And that one is always interesting to use, because it will tell you like insights that ChatGPT will. And this is Google telling you insights, supposedly. It might just be the AI, but it's Google's AI giving you a little bit more insights about like best practices for like keywords and content, things like that. Still not accurate. Just got to double and triple check everything, but it's definitely a good starting point, and it's interesting to test it out. And Google said we don't care who writes that content anymore. So as long as you follow good practices, Google said you're good to go with that AI content. Just edit it.
Right. Yeah, there's so much to dig into there. So I guess like you've had the agency for 17 years, and maybe you've had relationships with lots of these writers. Like, how are they thinking about AI? Like, what's your relationship with these writers like? How are they adapting this into their process, if at all? Like, how's that all going, that can of worms?
All the ones that I know pride themselves on content and hate AI, I'm holding on to them and still using them to write content and articles and blogs. But yeah, it's tricky because now I'm just constantly trying to find new writers, and at the point where I'm like, hey, AI writes just as well, still, but now I need more editors. So I feel like that's what's going to change for writers is writing still going to be around, but with AI, it's just does it too well now. It's just like editors. Same with like programming and coding. Like it'll code for you and it'll program, and but it's not perfect. But now I feel like you just need programmers just tweak it and modify it. And now it's just touching things up where it's kind of interesting. It takes that creative process out of a lot of stuff. And I don't know what's going to happen with all that, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's really on the decline, and I don't know what's going to happen with content. I'm writing a book right now. I'm like almost done with this book, and I'm like, wow, AI could have wrote this whole thing for me. I would want it to, but it's just so weird. I'm like, what's going to happen with books and all this stuff? Because it's so much time to write a book, and AI could write it really fast and really well. And it's crazy.
Yeah, I want to dig into your book. I'm curious about that. One thing I thought of as you were talking about that was there's this really good, I think it was maybe like an Instagram short or something from Jason Pargin. I don't know if you know him, but he's like a sci-fi writer. He wrote John Dies at the End. He's just like a really funny guy. But he was talking about how, like if you think about a description of an environment and something that AI could write, like describe for me the inside of this train station or something. There's no objective description of that environment because if you're developing characters, the things that they're describing are what matters, right? And that prioritization of like the way that if you want to talk about the inside of the train station from the part of a little boy versus a grown man versus this person or that person, it's really hard to imagine how AI is going to be able to do that entirely, right? Because it's like so much of that's just completely dynamic and chaotic in terms of how you come up with that. So that hopefully that brings me to a question, which is like you mentioned holding on to these certain writers. What do you feel like? Are you holding on to them just for old time's sake, or like are there things that you feel that they are bringing that the AI is not, and what are those things?
Yeah, no, better, more creative writing, like you said. So AI, it's kind of generic, but with good prompts, it makes it much better and giving it more insights instead of just saying, hey, write me an article. Like if you're selling dog food about like 7 reasons dog food is great, that's going to be very, very boring and generic. But say like, hey, here's my company and I'm trying to write this blog. What recommendations of topics do you recommend? And then from there, get some good topics. You could have it then write an outline, then you modify that outline, tweak it, and then I could give it to the writers, but I still prefer to have them do it all themselves and just get that creative process going. But the more inputs you put into that AI, the more you just keep, instead of just saying, do this for me, it's like step 1, step 2, step 3, and I have all these different steps and all these different layers that go into it, and that really gets it more personalized. And you could either read content from the blog or content that business owners put out and have it kind of trained to sound and be like that person and make it more personalized.
Yeah, this is kind of a tangent, but like another thing that made me think of is, did you ever read Cryptonomicon, the classic Neil Stephenson book?
No.
It's a great one, but basically like they have this big entrepreneurial enterprise they're building, and there's these two characters, and one of them is like, with every project there is this like core nugget of like interesting creative work, and then everything else is making license plates. That's basically like how he describes it. And I feel like AI is basically condensing what that nugget is, but there still is some nugget of creativity that has to go into all this stuff. So anyway, that may not make any sense, but I digress. To shift gears a little bit, I think one thing that a lot of our audience struggles with, especially now with whatever's going on, economy, blah, 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 is business development. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like how would you describe your BD process and how has it changed over the years?
Well, getting new business is always, well, first I started with Craigslist, then
Yeah.
quickly stopped doing that because that is not the best. But back in 2007, it's a good way to kind of just get it going. And it was so popular back then, and you could post for free there and find local businesses. And then once I had my website built, that was back in 2008, where I bartered with that person, that business. And then I used that to market myself and made that start ranking for keywords and start optimizing that and using that as like a portfolio. And used that to help me get business where people would start finding my website locally around where I lived in the South Bay in Los Angeles. And then from there would start teaching classes as a way to get clients, and would do that and partnered with like the Small Business Association and these different online or digital marketing kind of colleges around Los Angeles, and still do that. But now it's really just people find me word of mouth and referrals, and still run some ads for cold outreach, but prefer the warm leads because those ads could be pretty expensive. If I like YouTube because Google owns it, and you get 30 seconds free ad space on YouTube ads, and people buy off people, and put a face behind a company I think is always good. And that's also something I've transitioned to, is not just being SEO optimizers, but people really buy off Brandon Leibowitz, not SEO optimizers, and just trying to brand myself more and put myself out there, which doubles all my work because now I have to have 2 Instagrams, 2 Facebooks, 2 Twitters, and it's just a lot to manage. But that I feel like is the best, and gotta just adapt and adjust and keep tweaking it. It's always constantly changing.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because like I feel like a few years ago, or maybe not even that long ago, the dominant idea was like you should focus on one channel, one thing, and get really good at that, right? And like if you're a podcast person, get good at the podcast. If you're a YouTube person, get good at YouTube. I always subscribe to that, and I still feel like I do 75%, maybe 80%. But now with AI, with how easy it is to repurpose stuff, I'm sort of changing that thinking a little bit. You know, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how do you feel about focusing on like one channel versus diversifying more?
Yeah, no, I'd always say first find that one channel where your audience is and go all in on that and then build that up. But you have to always take a step back and think like, who is your audience and where are they? And that's really what matters. If they're going to be on 3 different channels, I would focus on all 3 of them. But you don't want to spread yourself too thin. Like social media is where it's just too easy to get sucked into all those platforms. And that's where you got to really think like, who specifically is my audience? Where are they? And how do I get in front of them at the right moments? And not just get sucked into trying to post every day on every platform and trying to be everywhere, which it is good to be everywhere, but you really need to focus on where your audience is and really hone in on that. And then once you grow and get bigger, then you could just get yourself everywhere and try to automate some of that using tools like Zapier, or just anything to help automate and save you time. Whereas with like social media, like I would try to post on Instagram and then have that automatically go to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, my website, and just that way I'm just more hands-free, and it just saves me a lot of time versus having to manually go into 5 or 6 different social media platforms to post. It takes a lot of time.
For sure. One thing you said that was interesting is like kind of going where your audience is, and my impression, so to double click on YouTube, is that is changing a little bit on YouTube because of, I think it's maybe the rise of streaming services. I've other people have posted about this recently, and it seems like there's much more traffic going there, and I'm experiencing this in my own life where like YouTube is becoming more of a place you go to be entertained and to actually like watch stuff on your television in the evenings, as opposed to just, you know, whatever, like finding a spare 30 minutes on your laptop and clicking on weird videos and stuff. And I think because of that, it's becoming more viable for B2B, right? Because like everybody's just there versus, I don't know, versus like a consumer audience and that sort of thing. How do you feel about that, and how has that sort of affected your YouTube play?
I started to get into YouTube more recently. I had a YouTube channel, posted a video probably like in 2015 on it, and never really did much because I didn't really want to brand myself. I didn't think I needed to until later on I realized I need to go all in on my brand and build myself up versus just building the company up. But yeah, I started really going more all in on YouTube, maybe like 2019-ish. So, but it's always been good, I feel like, for YouTube. It's a great platform. And I've always heard people telling me, like, get a YouTube channel sooner than later, like start building it up. And I never really did it. And I wish I did take that action much sooner than later, because YouTube just puts a face behind that company and it builds that trust. And then it's owned by Google. It's the second most popular search engine, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And I know there's a lot more streaming, more competition, but people love YouTube. It's free. they don't want to hear those ads. So you could pay extra to get those ads gone, but those ads are only a few seconds, so they're not too intrusive and it's not too bad.
Yeah, and I think that I pay for premium, and it's definitely been worth it. Just having like not having to click through ads every time. Um, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and like it's kind of like there forever, and not forever, but nothing's forever, but a longer time than a lot of these other platforms like a LinkedIn or whatever that's more ephemeral and changing and so on. So that all makes sense. One thing that you kind of hit on that I think a lot of our audience is up against is balancing biz dev with everything else, clients fulfillment, everything else that has to get done, life. I think that a lot of the times the clients we have in our programs are like committed to building this repeatable biz dev system. And then a lot of the time something happens that is often positive. Like they get that big proposal in and they've got to go all heads down on it. They win two big, amazing clients. Then the thing that's going to actually like grow the equity value of the agency just keeps getting backburnered and like the can keeps getting kicked down the road. So I love to hear like, assuming you agree that that's a challenge, how have you sort of approached that, and how are you balancing your time between consistent biz dev and everything else that has to get done?
I mean, it's tough to, if only there's a couple more hours in the day, it would be perfect, but it is tough trying to manage everything. And that's where you just got to delegate and give stuff up that you want to hold on to that you think no one else can do. But sometimes it's just best to just let it go. And then you can start getting your time back and focus on more important things like more biz dev and getting on like podcasts and getting my name out there and trying to brand myself more, because all that takes time. And if you don't have time to do any of that stuff, you're just going to be stuck in the weeds, just working on the business, which it happens all the time, but you don't want to be sucked in there. So trying to just slowly get yourself out of there and just find the right people, find the right hires is always tricky too, but just slowly going at it and building it up and getting your time back and not just rushing through and finding or just going all in and spending thousands of dollars on ads every day, just trying to get as many leads as possible. And you're just like, I'm too booked up. I don't know what to do. So just trying to find that balance where sometimes I'm getting too busy where I have to like scale it back, which is currently where I'm at, where I'm like, I gotta cut it back. I have getting too many leads right now. I have too many calls booked on my calendar that I have to probably start finding a sales team and start working on that now, because I'd always do the sales myself. But now that is where I'm at, and it's always just evolving and finding one thing after another and just trying to realize, all right, I can't do 5 sales calls a day every day and work on my business. So now I have to figure this process out.
Yeah, and in my experience, that's the better way to do it, is to wait till you have too many calls and it hurts, versus what I think a lot of agency owners do, which is just like, can somebody else just solve this problem for me? And then they end up really kind of delegating pretty entrepreneurial stuff to a salesperson, right? Which is like, can you figure out how to create demand for my agency? Which is like, maybe somebody could do that, but you're probably not going to be able to afford them. And they may not, it may just have to continue to be an owner to really solve that problem. So it sounds like you're approaching it the right way. One thing you mentioned is delegation. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what have you been able to delegate recently, and how has that worked out?
I've been trying to delegate everything, still overlook everything though, but trying to delegate as much as possible, because first I would hold on to everything and didn't really have SOPs in place, and started doing that about like 5 years ago. And then I just been like, got to write SOPs for my SOPs and just trying to get everything documented and systemized and just making it all streamlined, because that is so very important. And without that, I feel like we wouldn't be able to you could delegate, but it's not always going to work properly. By having those systems that lets everyone know what step 1, step 2, step 3, and like follow this, because this is how we're going to get the best results and get the best results and the best movement for our clients the quickest.
Right. I want to dig into that a little bit more. Can you talk specifically about like what specifically has been the easiest and the hardest to delegate, if that makes sense?
I would say the easiest to delegate was maybe like content, just writing articles, and especially nowadays with AI, but even before that, just having other people manage my writers and let them just take over and work with all these. I'd have like 10 different writers at times. We're all freelancers, because it's like I'll get different projects where I'm like, I need 20 articles, or sometimes I need 200. So I'm like, all right, now I need to get a bunch of you out and work on it. So delegating that was pretty straightforward, where just let my assistant just manage over them and just make sure that they're writing the content on time, and and then I would read it over and just make sure that it reads properly. And I have them use AI checkers, but those AI checkers don't work anymore. So I just make sure that it's not duplicate content, and just give them that system and process, which that one's pretty straightforward, like 10 steps on that. Versus it is something with like going in and changing SEO title tags. It's like, all right, now we have to do keyword research, figure out what keywords we want to put on this page. That was tough for me to give up. And that one I still always check, because I want to make sure they find the right keywords. Keyword research is a little tricky. So they'll do the foundational work for me, and then I'll just overview and just make sure it looks all good on my end. But then they have to put write the title tags. Then they have to go in, and then you fill in the blank. It's on WordPress or Shopify or Wix or Squarespace or Joomla or Magento or custom coded, and add that title tag there. So that's also another part that's like, I have to write 10 extra steps for each platform, and it just takes so long. And it's like, all right, which ones are the more popular ones? Like WordPress, let me write that first, and Shopify, Wix, Squarespace. And then it's all these one-offs where I'm like, all right, now every time I get a new client where it's like, you have Magento or you're using Joomla or whatever, Dreamweaver, let me systemize this, or your own GoDaddy website builder, which get a lot of people on that one, which I'm like, I don't know why you're on this platform. It's a horrible platform, but
Yeah.
I gotta learn it, or not learn it, but teach it or systemize it and record it. But Loom has helped out a lot, where I used to write everything down, and now with Loom and AI, it'll record everything and then it'll write a SOP for me, which that's helped out a lot. And I started using that maybe like a year ago. Then that saved me a lot of time.
Well, it's funny because I feel like we're in this weird moment where, depending on your market, like if you're selling to, I don't know, tech startups, everybody's just native to AI. They're not native, but they know that you're using it, they're using it, everyone's using it. Versus like if you're an agency selling to, I don't know, manufacturers or maybe like pharma or something like that, you have this kind of like weird superpower where a lot of these legacy industries just haven't really started using this stuff yet. And you've got this like superhero like cape, and you're like flying around while everyone's like walking, and that won't last forever, but it's sort of this interesting time for sure. This is great, man. So I guess like to shift gears a little bit, I'd love to hear, like, if you don't mind me asking, what are your goals for the agency? Like after 17 years, like what are you looking to build and bring it to? And we talked to a lot of owners, and some are like looking to scale what they do to the moon. Others are like hoping to get acquired, and love to learn about that a little bit.
No, just keep it growing and keep growing it. Like you said, scaling to the moon is what I would want to do, is keep it and just keep building it up and keep growing it and keep expanding it over the years.
Yeah. And at this point, like what do you find stimulating about the agency? What are your favorite parts about it? Kind of like basically what gets you up in the morning?
It's always something different. Well, especially with AI, but even before AI was popular with Google, it's always something different. Just trying to stay up to date with the latest changes, and it's not just the same thing over and over again, which makes it interesting and makes it kind of like a detective, where you're just like, what's Google thinking now? But now it's like, all right, what's ChatGPT? What's all these platforms? What are they all thinking now?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's such a moving target, which makes it interesting and fun. That's all. That makes sense. So, Brandon, this has been a pleasure. It's been great learning about your journey. Where could people go to follow what you're up to, either on YouTube or elsewhere, and get in touch and all that good stuff?
Anyone that wants to learn more, I created a special gift for them. If they go to my website at seooptimizers.com/gift, that's SEOOptimizers.com/gift, and they can find my contact information there as well, and classes I've done over the years I've thrown up for free, so they could see step by step how to do a lot of stuff that we talked about with SEO and with AI. I show how you could use AI to help with your SEO, and all that is up there for free. And also, if they have a website, they could book some time on my calendar there as well for a free website analysis.
Awesome, man. Good on you for putting your best foot forward there, marketing wise. And we'll get that all linked up. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.